Hello and welcome to another episode of Toxic Love Transformation. I'm your host, Stephanie McPhail, and today I wanted to jump on and talk about one of the reasons why I do what I do to help people heal from toxic relationships. In the news all the time, you hear about people that have been killed by their significant others, where there's domestic violence, where people have been let out of jail, and then they go on to murder their significant others after they've been let out. And so, just recently, and I'm thinking of more than a few cases here, but someone that I am friends with, she's actually a doctor in California, sent me an article because in her community, there was a woman who had finally called the police to get help for her abusive husband. And allegedly he had been going on for years with major abuse going on. And she called from probably a closet or somewhere, whispering into the phone and saying, "I'm afraid that my husband's going to kill me. Please come and send help." And so the police dispatcher sent help. Somebody came, and when the police got there, she had bruises all over her body. And she did again say that she was fearful for her safety. So they did the right thing at that point. They did arrest her husband, and he was put on $30,000 bail. Now, and he was actually also granted an emergency, or she was granted an emergency order of protection, which is super, super helpful. As much as, a lot of people will say orders of protection are only as good as the paper they are printed on, I do partially agree with that, especially if we don't use it or follow through with it. And that's a whole other conversation. But anyway, so after that happened, the husband is put in jail, and he probably calls her. They talk somehow, and I guess he talks to the probation officer or whomever and says, "Hey, I want to be let go." And the probation officer calls up the wife and says, "Do you feel fearful for your safety?" And she turns around and says, "No." Now, for anyone who's never been in a domestic violence situation, you might not understand the psychology of why someone might turn around and renege on what they said. When I was in an abusive marriage and I had my ex-husband arrested, I actually spoke to the court. I actually found the letter a few months ago of me begging the court to drop the charges and let him go and allow us to see each other so we could work on our marriage, which is literally what this woman did as well. Now, one of the reasons why we do that is because, number one, we're being told by our abuser, by the family, by other people that we're ruining their lives, that we need to drop things, let it go. It's not as bad as it seems. And of course, if you are not in that relationship, you have no idea what's going on there. So for anybody who says that you're making a big deal, they obviously are not experiencing what you are experiencing. You are correct in your feelings. If you don't feel safe, there is a reason for that. And so, like in my situation, the court did drop the charges, and they had him go to anger management classes. Now, in anger management classes, he was with other domestic violence abusers. And in those classes, he would come back home and he would tell me how terrible all of these other men were and how much better off he was, basically, and realistically in his mind probably, because these men were beating up their wives or girlfriends and leaving bruises and broken bones and things like that. He thought he wasn't doing as much, but he had strangled me several times. He had thrown things at me several times. He threatened my life over and over again. Those are all pretty major things. But he was basically coming at it as it wasn't as big of a deal. And of course, looking back at all of this, I wish that the district attorney would have fought more for me. Because when we are being manipulated and gaslit for so long, it's hard for us to see the reality. It's hard for us to really understand how quickly things can escalate. And of course, with strangulation, you can kill someone really quickly. It's a felony. It's a pretty major offense right now. It wasn't a felony before, but now it is a felony for someone to strangle someone. So they let him go. And of course, we kept trying to make things work. And luckily, I was able to leave the situation and get a divorce, and I was okay. He didn't follow through on any of the things he told me he was going to do. Let's go back to this other situation of this very recent, it was July 12th, I want to say, because I read the article, it was from July 13th. So she was murdered on July 12th, which is actually my ex anniversary. That's very interesting. Anyway, so she drops the charges. The DA says, we don't think you should. The probation people say, you know what? She says she's safe. Let's listen to her. Instead of the DA, they release him on the $30,000 bail, and he literally leaves court. Oh, and they lower his order of protection, and he goes right to her house, to their house, and murders her. Now, there are not enough laws and there's not enough training when it comes to domestic violence. I think that when we are in a situation like this where we are fearful for our safety, we are not thinking clearly, and we need someone else to help us. We need someone else to make sure that we are being protected. If you remember the Gabby Petito case a few years ago, a fellow Long Islander, I actually know the family now. They've reached out to me saying they wanted to work with me, and they were just so upset at the fact that their daughter was given an opportunity when the police pulled them over to get someone else from the outside to help, but instead they put her back in that harmful situation and she ended up being murdered. Over and over again, in all of these cases, we are seeing women call for help, begging and pleading for someone to help them, and instead of them getting the help they need, not the help they want. Because that's the thing too, is that we don't know what we need when we're in those kinds of domestic violence situations. We're in survival mode. We're not thinking clearly. We need someone else that's on the outside to be like, yo, this isn't right. This should not be happening, and we're not going to allow this to happen. We are going to keep him in custody. We are going to keep you two separated. We're going to help you find a job. We're going to put you in, into housing, whatever it is that needs to be done to protect you and possibly the children as well. Because so often this ends with someone dying, and it is hardly ever the abuser. It's always the person that's being abused. So whenever someone says, like, why are you such an advocate? It's because this could literally happen to anyone. It doesn't matter your socioeconomic background. It doesn't matter your education levels. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't even matter if you're a male or a female, to be quite honest. I always say, men and women, but that's because I was a woman in a domestic violence situation with a man. However, there are very high levels of domestic violence also with same-sex couples, and they're afraid to go and get help because they're afraid of being judged because it's a same-sex couple. There's plenty of men that are being abused, and they're afraid of being judged because they're men and they should be strong and figure all of it out. We need to get more laws in place. Now, I'm going blank right now on the state. I want to say Tennessee, but don't quote me on it. Do some research yourself. There is a state that was looking at trying to make it so that when the abusers were released on bail, that they would have to wear like an ankle bracelet and be tracked everywhere they went. That way the victim would be able to get notifications on their phone to know if they were in close proximity. Now, is this a fix all? No, not 100%, but it is something. It is something better, so at least these women know. Because realistically, a lot of us, myself included, will let them right in. When I got an order of protection against my ex-husband, I was letting him in. I was meeting him. I knew that I was breaking the order of protection that I had gotten and meeting him up at a hotel. Because I had hope, like so many of these other women, that things were going to get better, that he was finally going to become the man that I had fallen in love with, the man that I married, and he was going to follow through and make the changes, stop being abusive, start actually being a partner and a husband and a good person. But instead, every time I let him back, what ends up happening is they lose more and more respect for us, and they become more and more abusive. Now, anyone who's listening to this, if you've not experienced abuse, thank goodness. And if you're not sure if you have, let me tell you this. The moment that things become physical, you are now at stage 4. Now, when you think about cancer, because let's look at it like this, you're looking at different levels of abuse, and we're looking at what happens at these different levels. Now, when we're looking at verbal abuse, of course, that has different levels of verbal abuse, but excuse me, I would say number 3 is threats to your safety. If there's been no physical violence whatsoever at that point, level 3 to me is threats to your safety. Like my ex-husband, will never find your body at the bottom of, the marshes in New Jersey. Or I would never get a divorce. I would burn the house down before I would leave you the house, or whatever things that he would say that would make me afraid for my safety. That is at least a level 3 when it's just verbal. But number 4, when there starts to be pushing, shoving, throwing things, actual hit, touch of any kind, where they are strangling you. I mean, again, I minimized the amount of abuse I was getting in order to survive, in order to deal and try to handle all the things that I was dealing with. And again, I was a successful woman who was doing so well in all these other places. I didn't want anybody else to know what was going on. So even though there was the abuse happening, I was trying to make things make sense. And I was also hoping that my marriage would work and that things would be okay. So I was minimizing everything. So if you're listening to this, any type of physical violence, stop minimizing it and know that that is stage 4. And like in cancer, after stage 4, there is a very strong chance of death. And I don't want to make this pretty. I don't want to beat around the bush. I want to be very, very specific. Because again, when we are in these types of relationships, we minimize and try to ignore these major warning signs because we keep trying to make it work. We're used to figuring things out. We think that if we just try harder, if we just do what they want to do, if we change the parts of us that are making them upset, that they're getting frustrated with, then things will get better. But there are some things you can't move past. Now, when you're looking at how you speak to each other, I would say cursing at each other as at the very least a 2. If you are being cursed at, if you are being threatened, my ex loved calling me a cunt, a whore. He loved telling me that I was a lesbian and that I was cheating on him with other women. I wasn't cheating on him with anyone, but that actually probably made him feel better because he knew that he didn't deserve me. But all of those threats, all of those things are at the very least a level 2. When you're looking at all these different levels, remember that just like with cancer, we want to make sure that we turn things around. And a lot of the times, if there's lack of communication, they're not looking to work on things and change things, then the way to fix and turn things around is to end the relationship. Love yourself enough to know that you deserve more. Because when we get to level 4, we're in danger zone. We are in this place that we could end our life. And I 100% believe that if I would not have left my ex-husband when I did, I might not be here right now having this conversation with any of you. And I don't want that for you. I want you to be in a relationship, and I hope this is what you want for yourself. I want you to be in a relationship where you feel safe, where you feel heard, where you feel like you can talk about anything and everything, where you are literally with your best friend going on adventures and living life together. Because life is hard enough. We don't need to add having a toxic partner in it, and we don't need to add not being safe at home. Home should be the place where you are the safest, where you can be you can be all of the weirdo you that you are, because that's another thing that they do. They try to tell us that the reason why they are being abusive to us is because we are too much, we're too opinionated, we're too strong-willed, we're not listening, we're not, whatever those things are, those excuses that they are making about what they are doing to us is not okay. And that's not what a healthy relationship is. So if you are questioning whether or not you are yourself in a toxic relationship, then you probably are. If you feel like you can't talk to your partner about anything and everything, you're probably not in a healthy relationship. Now, if you're at level 1 and you're both looking to work on the situation, then work on it. Go to counseling, go to therapy, learn how to communicate better, all of that kind of stuff. If both of you are working on it. But a relationship that gets better is not because one person is doing all the work. It's because both people are doing all the work. Once we get to level 2, 3, 4, there's no working on that relationship. There is getting out of that relationship because you've already seen that they are not healthy and safe for you. Now it is time to make your plan to exit. So if you are having trouble figuring out how to get out, definitely call your local domestic violence hotline. They can help you if you're needing help, if you're needing so a lot of the people that come to us, they are either in a situation where they know things aren't great and they know they need to start making plans to get out. Then we work with people that need that. And we also work with people that are on the other side, have left these types of, whether it's physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, people that are on the other side and are like, oh my gosh, what happened? How did I get there? How did I get so lost? How do I not know who I am anymore? Maybe we never knew who we were. We help people rediscover who they are, step into their full potential, step into their full greatness so that they will come to a point where they will protect their energy and they will no longer accept people to treat them badly. So that's where we want you to be, because no matter what you do in your life moving forward after this, I would rather be single and happy than be in a relationship where I feel alone and I don't feel safe. That is not a way to live your life. That is not a way to continue living your life. So I hope this was helpful. I appreciate everybody coming on and hanging out with us. I just really wanted to make sure that I talked about that, because there are too many people in the news that I am reading about every single day where people are losing their lives because they are staying in these toxic relationships. And if they're not being murdered by their significant others, there's a lot of people having health issues and mental health issues in conjunction, or because of, I should say, their unhealthy toxic relationship. Sometimes it's not taking medicine because you're feeling depressed. It's figuring out why you're depressed. Sometimes that's because of the people that you are surrounding yourself with. But the good news is that you can get help and things can change. So again, on that note, thank you everybody for tuning in and hanging out. I will see you again next week. Never forget, you are way stronger than you realize. Bye everybody.